Good morning. Disappointed that I can't join you this morning, but we have this alternative that we can go to that brings us together, brings us closer. Now, I do plan, just because I'm not there now, I do plan on making it out there at some point. I'd love to meet the congregation out there. Been looking forward to it since Donnie brought it to me. But here we are. So we'll make the best of this situation now. We had the opportunity to do a campaign here at Inglewood where we were just focused on servant, being a servant. Now, I had this opportunity to preach out of Numbers chapter 12, and that's going to be the lesson that I bring to you this morning, mainly because I think that this can reflect upon pretty much anybody. This is relevant to anybody's life. When we look through chapter 12 of Numbers, we see basically a roller coaster of things going on. But what we're going to focus on is the servitude of Moses, the attitude that he had all throughout. Now, one thing that we're going to notice is strong servants appear weak. Now, Dreyton, what are you talking about? Strong servants appear weak in the eyes of the world. And we'll see 3 situations where that's true, and then we'll look at it later on to see what in the world that means. So, first situation that strong servants appear weak. Strong servants appear weak by staying silent. In verse 1 and 2 of chapter 12, then Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Cushite woman, whom he had married, for he had married a Cushite woman. And they said, has the Lord indeed spoken only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us as well? And the Lord heard it. Now Miriam and Aaron were speaking against Moses. They had this racism against his wife, and they were just completely against him in this situation. But notice one thing. Moses doesn't partake in the sharing of words. He's not trying to create a back and forth. He doesn't allow it to turn into an argument. All that happens is he stays silent. Now, I'll share with you a story from Brother Donnie Bates. He shared with us about an elder in a church that he had heard of, and I'm not entirely sure the background of the story. But an elder basically gets the scolding of a lifetime. He's pulled aside after church, and a woman just goes ballistic on him. Tells him that he's just this terrible elder. Wants to show him, you're just not a good elder. You do this wrong, you do that wrong. I just don't think you should be an elder. And the elder stops, listens to every word that she has to say, even though every single word was negative. And just listens to it. Takes every single word. And then he replies, I'm sorry. Please pray for me to be a better elder. He didn't turn around and scold her, I am your elder, you better listen to me. That is not what he does. All he does is apologize and ask for prayers to be a better elder. There are so many people that will speak poorly against us. So many. There will always be someone that wants to speak against us. But if we join them in what they say against us, we are no better. We are no better than them. This ultimately just turns into an argument when you do that. I don't agree with what you're saying. I don't like you very much. Turns into an argument. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, we're not here to win arguments. We are here to win souls. Who are we serving? If we're here to win an argument, we're serving ourselves. But if we're here to win that soul, we're serving God. The second situation that we're going to look at, strong servants appear weak by subjecting themselves. Now, verse 2, we have what has been spoken against Verse 1 and 2, we have what has been spoken against Moses. And then we have verse 3. Now the man Moses was very humble, more than any man who was on the face of the earth. And then in verse 7, not so with my servant Moses, he is faithful in all of my household. He subjected himself to God. Moses is subject to God. He does what is asked of him. He is ultimately at the control of God. But he's also an earthly authoritative figure. But Miriam and Aaron did not respect the authority that he had. Even though Moses looked to God for all authority. Now, I worked at a hotel a few years back, and the owner replaced the manager with a woman that just was really ambitious about everything. Her main focus was to make sure that the employees were taken care of. That was all she cared about, was, are you happy with what you're getting paid? Are you happy with the working conditions? Are you happy with the people that you're working with? Is your schedule okay? That's all she was concerned about. She wasn't concerned about many other things other than making sure the employees were good, because that was a start. That was the foundation, right? But there was one employee that just had it out for her. Didn't like her at all, just hated her guts. And nobody really knew why until she tried to take her job. And that's exactly what happened. She ended up taking her job. She didn't respect her authority. She didn't want to serve her. All she wanted was to be in charge. And eventually, everything just fell. Now, do we ever become so prideful that we'll speak poorly against an authoritative figure? Say an elder. You don't agree with the elder. How often does that happen? Well, it happens a lot because we're human. We don't agree all the time. But if we start to speak out against that authoritative figure, we're not serving them. They are serving God. They are serving you. But if you're not serving them, ultimately, you're not serving God. Are we truly servants, or are we just so prideful that we feel like we're a necessity? Do you feel like what you're doing right now is so important that they can't do it without you? That's what we're looking at here. Are we striving to be as humble as the most humble man on the face of this earth? Is that what we're striving for? If it's not, it's what we should be striving for. We should strive to be as humble as Moses is. He gave up himself to serve God. And here, he is so humble that he doesn't even speak up against something that's being spoken against him. That's not his prerogative here. That's not what he's looking for. He's not looking for a fight. He's not looking to be recognized. He just stays silent. And he subjects himself to Miriam and Aaron. We'll look at another situation in which strong servants appear weak. Strong servants appear weak by showing sympathy. How is that weak, really? But we have in verse 13, and Moses cried out to the Lord, saying, "O God, heal her, I pray." The story here, Miriam and Aaron speak out against Moses. He doesn't say a word, but the Lord heard every word of it. The Lord called them all together to meet in the tent. And the Lord comes down in a cloud and stood at the doorway of the tent. And this is what he says to Miriam and Aaron. "Hear my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, shall make myself known to him in a vision. I shall speak with him in a dream. Not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my household. With him I speak mouth to mouth, even openly and not in dark sayings, and he beholds the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant, against Moses?" The anger of the Lord burned against them, and he left. In verse 10 is what we have happening to Miriam. "But when the cloud had withdrawn from over the tent, behold, Miriam was leprous, as white as snow. As Aaron turned toward Miriam, behold, she was leprous." That instant punishment right there. Instant. Can't undo it. It's done. All because they wanted to speak against Moses. God didn't like that very much. God didn't like that they were speaking against his servant, against Moses. Verse 11, "Then Aaron said to Moses, O my Lord, I beg you, do not account this sin to us in which we have acted foolishly and in which we have sinned. Oh, do not let her be like one dead, whose flesh is half eaten away when he comes from his mother's womb." And that's when Moses cries out, "Oh God, heal her, I pray." The amount of humility it takes to pray for someone that has just spoken against you is huge. Someone that has done you wrong, yet he begs for mercy. He prays for it. There's a film called Through the Gates of Splendor, where there's 5 men that go into this jungle. And the government of this area had already determined that they were either going to eradicate this tribe that they were trying to reach, or they needed to reach them in some way. So these 5 men went out and they seeked after the most dangerous tribe in all of this jungle, in all of the earth, is what was considered to be. They didn't speak any language that anybody knew. It was a very secluded language. Nobody knew who these people were. And anyone that did go and get to know them was ultimately killed immediately. But these 5 men, knowing that their lives were at stake, went out and tried to save the souls of these people. They went out and they landed the first time and nothing went wrong. But the second time that they went out, they were there for a little bit, perfectly fine, and out of nowhere, they're killed. The plane is stripped. All of their equipment is just gone. Everything. Just gone. They'd killed them. Now the wives had heard of this and they saw that their husbands were not coming back to them. They didn't just condemn those people for killing them. They still sought out reason, and they made an effort to go and save the souls of these people, regardless of the fact that they killed their husbands. They go out and they learn parts of the language, and they share through interpreters how to reach God, how to be one with God, and that Christ died for them. And ultimately, they learned the gospel, and that is the most important thing. They put out the fact that their husbands were killed. They put that aside. They put aside their own personal thoughts, their personal interests, they put those aside and put God first. It wasn't about what they felt in their heart, but what would they have to do to please God? That was the ultimate thing. They never really thought twice about it. All they wanted to do was please God. Now, as servants of God, we need to serve regardless of what we feel. I don't care if you don't like this person. I don't care if I don't like this person. They are a soul that needs to be saved. It doesn't matter what you think of them. Now, Moses was praying for Miriam to be healed. Even though that he was struck down with words. We're going to be spoken against constantly. But that doesn't mean that we can just go and pray for the utter destruction of people. We shouldn't pray that someone dies because you just don't like them. That's not the kind of attitude that we should strive to have. We need to show that sympathy. Now we have 3 different situations where a strong servant appears weak. Strong servants appear weak by staying silent, not saying a word against those that are saying words against you. Moses didn't say a word. Strong servants appear weak by subjecting self. You are subject to God, not to yourself. You are subject to God. You are subject to others. You are there to serve them, not yourself. A strong servant appears weak by showing sympathy. We show that sympathy through love, through praying for those that need it, praying for our enemies. All of us need to strive to be better servants, to reflect what Moses is showing. In any of these situations, was Moses truly weak? No. He was very strong. It takes courage to stay silent. But in the eyes of the world, the servant was weak. Moses was weak. In the eyes of the world, he didn't stand up for himself. He didn't put himself in authority. He didn't claim that authority. Therefore, he's weak. But in God's eyes, he is strong. He put God first, humbled himself, and served them. Wow. Isn't this a wonderful example of the kind of servants that we should strive to be? Moses was a strong servant. He was humble. He was forgiving. He was loving. We must have the servant attitude that Moses had. Now, the man Moses was very humble. More than any man who was on the face of the earth. We need to strive to be that humble. We need to strive to be that servant. To be willing to subject ourselves to others, to God. To be humble. You're not a necessity. We're all just chains or links in the chain. We're all here to serve God. And if we serve one another, it makes our lives easier, our jobs easier to serve God. Thank you.